Volkswagen made some changes to the 2025 GTI. Most of those changes are really nice with one terrible omission. But in the end, this is still the GTI that we know and love. It blends utility with fun to drive nature in a relatively affordable package if you spec it right. This one is the middle SE model. The S starts at $32,445 and the SE adds another $5,000 on top of it. The Autobahn starts at close to $41,000. And this is all before delivery. Mechanically, these new GTIs are the same as the previous one. They're still powered by the EA888 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It still makes 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. It's a delightful 4-cylinder with a good amount of grunt and should be good enough to propel you from 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds. They're all still attached to the 7-speed dual clutch, though this time that isn't an option. It's the only transmission you can get with a GTI. It's sad, I know. I'm a big fan of manual transmissions. My personal cars, I would spec it as manual transmissions if I can. So to see it happen to such a beloved nameplate like the GTI is pretty disappointing. But this is the state of the automotive industry at this point. It's just harder to sell cars with manual transmissions. And the only fix is for people like you and I to keep buying manual transmissions when they're offered. But I will say that this 7-speed dual clutch gearbox in this GTI is fantastic. And compared to some of the other dual clutch gearbox in the industry, I think this is the best. More on that in the driving experience section of this video. Now, when it comes to the visual differences, I think the new GTI looks pretty awesome. And that's because they made it look more like the racier Golf R. Well, last year's Golf R anyway, because the new Golf R has also been restyled. The GTI still has that honeycomb fog lights, which I think is a fantastic design element. The headlights have been restyled. It looks smaller and more streamlined. You still have the daytime running lights going across as well as the red trim. And the Volkswagen badge is now lit up. Around the side, the GTI branding has been moved from the front fender to the front door. The SE model gets the 18-inch wheel standard, and these are very plain looking wheels. I think they're just begging for an upgrade. The side of the car is still pretty much the same. It still has that very distinctive but simple GTI styling. And at the rear, the GTI looks very clean, straightforward, dual exhaust, LED taillights, and also integrated spoiler. It's very simple, classic GTI. Inside, the GTI gets some nice improvements. The biggest one is the addition or the reintroduction of physical buttons on the steering wheel. The previous one had some haptic, touch-sensitive buttons that you can accidentally activate if you just kind of graze over the surface. I hated those things. I think a lot of reviewers hated those as well. I don't know about the users. I think some people complained, but enough people complained that Volkswagen decided to bring these back, and I think this is just a really nice addition. They've also included a larger 12.9-inch screen. This infotainment system has the wireless app connect, so you can get access to wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. They've also kept the touch-sensitive buttons on here as well, like the volume slider and also the climate control settings. And then the power button for the stereo is on the left-hand side. The nice upgrade here is that these buttons are now backlit. So I can't believe I'm saying that that's an improvement, but the previous one was not. So in the dark, you might not know that there's anything there at all unless you're the driver and you're just used to it. Other than that, this is still the same standard GTI experience. You have a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster. Some of the other controls, like the headlight functions on the left-hand side here, they're still touch sensitive. Same like the drive mode controls, the climate controls, and also your assist and parking menus, except for the hazard button. That is still a physical button. Is it a big problem that those buttons are still touch sensitive? I don't really think so, because these things you don't often use, but except for this one, the drive mode button, I often use that to change between eco, comfort, and sport. As for the seats, I like the look of these Club Sport seats. The finish is really nice. I like the GTI stitching right there. They are heated, but not ventilated. It comes with some manual adjustments, so forwards and rearwards is handled by that handle. Up and down is handled by this toggle, but then there's an electronic adjustment for the tilt. When it comes to space, the GTI isn't a terribly big car, and I think that's part of the appeal. Cars just don't have to outdo every other model year after year. That's how cars just get bigger and bigger. So the GTI still has that charming small size. There's 35 inches of rear legroom space. And for me, I'm 5'8". There's a good amount of headroom space back here because there's 38.1 inches of rear headroom. This is a pretty good size in the random chance that you have friends and family over in this car. Cargo space is almost at 20 cubic feet behind the second row. And look at that, this thing still has a spare. Fold the back seats down. and you get about 34.5 cubic feet of space. You know, this is the appeal of these hatchbacks. They're very space efficient, and it's been that way through all of the Golf generations. Now, when it comes to the driving experience, this 2025 GTI is still a GTI to the core. That is if you can ignore the loss of the 6-speed manual transmission. The turbo engine is nice and peppy, and it has a good strong pull. It's not gonna break any records or beat some of the other fun cars in this price range, but I think you're not gonna be disappointed with it in stock form. And if you are disappointed, there's so much aftermarket support for this platform that it's pretty ridiculous. In stock form though, it already has a noticeable amount of torque steer, and that's just what happens with a front wheel drive car and a little bit of power. It's very manageable, and it adds to that GTI fun. And when you take it through back roads, the suspension feels sporty, but there is some noticeable amount of body roll, not that much. I think the stock suspension feels more dialed in for general everyday driving scenarios, so there's a nice blend of sportiness and comfort, and it's not too stiff. I think upgrade the coilovers and also have beefier sway bars, and this thing is going to be a corner carving monster. But in stock form, it's just okay. I do like the addition of the electronic limit slip diff and how it's standard across the entire GTI lineup. The brakes feel adequate, and the 7-speed dual clutch transmission is not bad at all. I find myself driving the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox much more quickly, consistently compared to the manual transmission, because there's really no effort in shifting at all. Whereas if you want to drive quickly in a manual transmission, you really have to focus hard at doing it well. But for this dual clutch automatic, you just peg the foot down and the robot will do all of the work for you. Does it have those DCT quirks? To an extent, yes, but compared to other dual clutch transmission cars like the BMW or the Mini dual clutch transmission, this feels a lot better in those slow speed situations. In those other cars, you just feel a slight hesitation somewhat because the car doesn't know what you're trying to do. Whereas in this Volkswagen GTI, the acceleration can feel a little bit more strong than you would like, but at least it takes away some of that hesitation. And if this explanation doesn't make sense, take this Volkswagen GTI out for a test drive and go through a small town, and when the red light turns green, you just take your foot off the brakes and just feel how it accelerates forward. After that, take yourself to a BMW or a Mini dealership, test out the new Mini Cooper or any of the smaller BMW SUVs that have this 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, and do the same thing. You will feel a difference. It's like almost night and day. Overall, I think this refreshed GTI is still the standard GTI experience minus the 6-speed manual transmission. And that part is sad considering that I think a lot of people learn how to drive the manual transmission on a 6-speed manual GTI. But all things considered, this new 2025 GTI is a nice package. The SE is about $5,000 more than the base S. And considering the standard equipment across all GTIs, I think the S trim is actually the one to go with. Just save the $5,000 and put those into upgraded coilovers, upgraded sway bars, and maybe some basic performance upgrades. And this thing is just going to be a nice corner track monster, nice for autocross. And in terms of size, I think this is the perfectly sized car. I want to thank you so much for watching all the way up to this point. If you want to see my review of the Golf R, check this link over here. But thank you so much for watching. My name is Hanson. That is the 2025 Volkswagen GTI, and I'll see you in the next one.